joining us on the horn right now. You might remember this guy.
And 2nd and 13 after the penalty. Lewerke running out of time. Again, escapes and heads toward the end zone. Diving. Touchdown, Spartans.
We'd like to welcome in QB1, Brian Lewerke, Michigan State alum. He's done this a few times, battling it out for Paul Bunyan. Brian, my friend, good morning to you. How are you? How's life? How are things, partner?
Good morning, man. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm in Philadelphia living now with my wife, so things going really well.
Hey, city of brotherly love. We love that for you. When you hear that highlight call, does it immediately bring you back to that individual? Do you know what individual play that was against Michigan when you're scampering into the end zone trying to break my heart there?
Of course I know that play. I always go through all of my favorite plays of all time, and I think that one's my number one on my list, just because of the importance in that game and who it was against, and that's definitely my favorite play of all time.
Now, and you've been dabbling into the media world as well with the You Are the Program podcast. Tell us a little bit about what you got brewing on over there.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. It's a You Are the Program podcast. We got it on Spotify. It's me and two of my buddies that I played football with, Dante Rosano and Tyler Higbee. They were doing it last year, and I was a guest on it a couple times. And I decided they invited me to hop on and be a full-time guy on it this year. And, we just kind of do it for fun. It keeps us caught up with Michigan State football, and it's just a lot of fun to do and, give our opinions on the team.
Has this year, because of your time there and that specific game in which, I ran the highlight from is Michigan State at 3-1 taking on the 7th-ranked Michigan Wolverines, who at the time were 4-0. When you think back to what that game meant to you in that year, 2017, and you look at where, this program is at right now, how do you kind of digest sort of the direction things have gone and how things have kind of, basically come a little bit unraveled here in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, that game back then meant a lot to us. It was my first road start against Michigan. My first start in general against Michigan, and it kind of got us onto a little bit of a run that year. That was a pretty good year for us, but there's been a lot of things that have happened this year in 2023 that kind of have been out of the players' hands that they weren't able to control. And I think as far as playing, they've done as much as they can to try and put a good product out in the field. And I think that I know there's a bunch of good leaders on the team, and they're doing a good job keeping everyone together so far.
And I'm glad you brought it up from that perspective, right? It's out of the players' control. You're coming into the season. Nobody really knows what the expectation is, right? Some people might say 8-4. Some people might say 5-7 because you play the schedule game, because we all do it because we're sickos like that. We've been deprived of football for months at a time. So the minute we get a schedule, it's everybody's foaming at the mouth, trying to figure out who's going to win and lose. Like we're out there playing. I mean, at least you were out there playing. I just say we like I speak French or I got a mouse in my pocket. But one of those guys, right? I'm gonna go out there and make some tackles. Yeah, right. But when you think about all that has happened, being outside of the players' control, how do those guys go about galvanizing anything in that tank, especially for this week? Trophy game, rivalry game, things haven't gone according to plan at all, not meeting the expectation. But at the end of the day, if they win this, I mean, does this kind of put a bow on? Like, if they win this game, they can all kind of hang their hat on that for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like this is the game definitely of all the games this year that you want to win. And I know Coach Barnett is telling them that he's been through it a couple times. And even when you look back on the 2020 season, how that wasn't the greatest year, but we ended up beating Michigan that year, and you kind of look on that year fondly because of the fact that we did beat Michigan. So this can definitely solve a lot of problems. It's one of the best feelings in the world, being able to hold Paul Bunyan and celebrate with him and celebrate with that trophy in the locker room. So I know these guys are going to give it their all, and it's an emotional game, and it's one where tensions will be running high. So I'm sure our guys will be ready.
Were you surprised when it was announced that this was going to be a night game?
A little bit. I mean, I was not surprised in a bad way. I was like, man, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be awesome. Because obviously I was a part of the first night game in the rivalry history of the game that you just showed the replay of in 2017. And I thought it's awesome that this is the first one in Spartan Stadium, first night game in Spartan Stadium against Michigan. First time wearing the black uniforms. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It should be a good time for all parties involved, and hopefully everybody's well behaved there. Cheer for your team. It's just your cousin or your neighbor over there. Don't get all goofy now. Don't get weird on us, Brian. When you see this individual match, and I got to ask you about Paul too, because I asked former Michigan Wolverine Chris Wormley about this. I'm trying to get a good gauge. How heavy is Paul Bunyan? Like how heavy is that thing? Because Paul, he looks huge.
I think, it's decently heavy. I'd say it's probably solid 20, 25 pounds.
Okay,
all
right.
Like too crazy, but it's definitely got some weight to it.
All right. And now when you look at this game and the quarterback play in particular for Michigan State, what did you see that stood out to you last week in comparison to the previous weeks where quarterbacking has been a little bit of an issue? And if there's anybody that knows about this, it's an actual quarterback himself.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's good to get a new face in there. In Caden Hauser, and once I went through a little bit when I was playing, is you start struggling, and you start second guessing things, and you're like, should I really throw to this guy? And you want to make the big play all at once instead of taking the short change and slowly moving the ball down the field. I felt that's kind of what Noah Kim had happened to him, is he was just trying to make stuff happen and not taking the short gains. And Caden's a fresh brain. He hasn't struggled. He hasn't had success yet. So he was just trying to go out there and play football. And I think it was good to get him out there and get some reps. And obviously, I don't think Noah Kim was playing terribly, but at some point you gotta go a different direction when you're losing 4 in a row.
And then Caden Hauser comes out, puts out that game where he's 18 of 29 against Rutgers, 133 yards. So nothing like too crazy, but hey, efficient. Take what the defense gives you. Throws a couple touchdowns, doesn't turn it over. The team is up big, right? I mean, they're up 24-6 after 3 quarters of play.
Yeah.
And then 21 unanswered in the fourth. And it kind of felt like, watching that game, it's like this one ain't, it's definitely not on the offense. The last couple of weeks, it's been all these other, these other, I don't want to call them clerical errors, but because special teams, they got to be special, right? It's the third facet of the game that nobody wants to talk about. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to cover in your punt coverage. You got to be able to cover in kick coverage. You got to be able, to take care of the football. And it's like, man, they finally get things rolling, and then they just shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Special teams has to be special. And the last 2 weeks, they have been the opposite of special. And I think, this week I'd be fine with special teams not even being noticed. Like you're fair catching every punt. You're catching the punt and getting it off. And because the last 2 weeks we've had the punt return for a touchdown and then the fumbled punt for a touchdown, and I think some of that stuff is tough to deal with, but that's football and that's life. And I think offense and defense have played pretty solid the last 2 weeks.
How can Michigan State beat Michigan tomorrow? Like what's going to be the secret sauce to beat this Wolverines team that hasn't given up more than 10 points to anyby, albeit they haven't really played anybody, but the people they have played can't score on them. So how do you get the football in the end zone against this group?
That's a tough question. I think the key to the game, though, is keeping the game close by halftime. And how to score exactly, I'm not quite sure. But keeping it close at halftime and then winning the third quarter, I think, is huge. Whether you're on offense, getting points on that first drive coming out of half, or if you're on defense, getting a stop, getting a 3-and-out. And getting the ball back for our offense is huge coming out of that third quarter. It kind of sets the tone for the second half and can get the momentum on our side pretty quickly.
The tunnel fracas kerfluffle from last year, we haven't really talked about it very much this week just because I don't really think it's relevant. That was at Michigan Stadium. Spartan Stadium set up differently. Punishments were doled out. Everything's been kind of off ever since anyways. So I haven't really spent a lot of time on that here on this program. I think I'm just more focused on the actual football because I think that when you bring that up, it starts to foster all the reckless behavior on the internet, and I'm not really here for that. But you see all that stuff go down in the post game, and as an alum who people look to very fondly with that program, what are you kind of thinking in that moment? And then since the time has gone by, is it kind of like water under the bridge at this point for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's been stuff in this rivalry that have happened, pre and post game. Obviously, that's not one of the prouder moments in Michigan State history on as far as that. But I think that's past us, and we can kind of look on that as not great. But hopefully we can win this Saturday.
Now, Brian, I'll tell you this. There's a Wolverines helmet on my desk here on the set. There is a Chris Webber jersey behind me, right? I'm an employee of the university, but I'm also very fair and very honest. And this next question, I'm going to ask all the honesty you got. Do you hate Michigan? Come on. Do you hate them?
Yes, I do.
See, that's it.
Plain simply.
And when you go to Michigan State and you're in that recruitment process, if you could think back to then, and obviously with different coaches it's going to be a little bit different, but is this a game that is discussed when you're thinking about, hey, you know what, I'm looking at going to Michigan State, I get on campus, I get into the facility and I'm talking to coaches, and is Michigan around in that conversation? Do they bring things to the table to kind of foster that that angst, that ill will, if you will?
Yeah, it definitely is. And I didn't really know too much about that coming from Arizona, which is where I went to high school. I didn't know too much about the rivalry. I took a visit to Michigan when I was in high school as well. They didn't have I forget the name of the coach they had before that, but yeah, that's definitely a point that Michigan State brings up, is like, this is a game that we want to win, and we play for when you come to Michigan State. This is our rival, and this is who we want to beat.
So, and because I believe you're from Scottsdale, if I'm not mistaken, correct? I like Scottsdale. Yeah. Beautiful this time of year. Beautiful all times of year, right? I mean, I like what I like about Scottsdale is like who's got natural grass and then who's got turf, right? It's like the battle in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
Like, who's got that natural grass? Because we want to go to their house. I guarantee you that barbecue, that cookout's going to be the real deal. So when you take a look at now the evolution of the Big Ten and the introduction of 4 new programs with Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA going to make the jump from the West Coast and the Pac-12 to the Big Ten next year. You being a West Coast guy, do you like that? Is this a good idea?
For the Big Ten, I like it, yes. Obviously for the Pac-12, it sucks. But, I mean, it's going to be awesome being – a Michigan State guy. Like, the guys on the team next year, they're going to be able to go travel to L.A. in November when it's 40 degrees and rainy in East Lansing, and it's 65 and sunny there. And obviously, it's great competition. Those teams are obviously. I'm from Washington. I was born in Seattle, so I have a little bit of tie to the University of Washington, I guess, just being from up there. And I think it'll be a lot of fun for the guys, and it should be good competition as well to play those teams from the West Coast.
I mean, so from Washington, then you make your way to Arizona. So we've covered the entire length of the Pacific Coast here in the Pac-12. So I might as well, you're a quarterback. Yeah. You could see this. The Pac-12 is about as good as they have been in a long time. And it's really sad that the conference is basically, I don't know if they're going to dissolve or what happens next, but they're getting great quarterback play. I mean, you look at the way that Bo Nix is playing, Michael Penix Jr., obviously Caleb Williams is probably going to be 1-1 in the upcoming draft. You look at the quarterback play out there, it has been sensational, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easily the best conference for quarterback play this year. I mean, the Big Ten's got a couple good guys, but yeah, I think Pac-12 for sure, and it does kind of suck that they are most likely going to dissolve after this year, because this is like I think the best year they've had since like the 50s or something. They had like 6 ranked teams at one point, and that hadn't happened since a long time ago. So.
Yeah, it's a really, really bad timing on their part to try to break off and then head to the Big Ten. But I am, just as you would be excited to go get out of East Lansing in November to go play a road game 65 and sunny, I am very interested to see how everybody handles our cold weather November games when they got to come up here and play, man. That's gonna be awesome. His name is Brian Lewerke. You can find him on Twitter at Brian Lewerke 14. The Michigan State alum's got the podcast out right now. You Are the Program. You can find that on Twitter as well as at YATP_podcast. Guy threw for over 8,000 yards at Michigan State. He's going to be rooting hard for the Spartans tomorrow. So I got to ask you, final score prediction. What do you got for us?
Obviously, I got to go with the Spartans here. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game if Michigan State does win. So I'm going to say it's going to be 21-17 Spartans.
21-17 Spartans. Brian, my friend, thank you so much for the time this morning, partner. We greatly appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me on. Go Green.